Hello, and welcome back to A Journey to King's Cross, a Harry Potter book podcast. We just finished off the chapter 13, The Very Secret Diary, and we have a dwarf in a Cupid outfit with singing, singing something heart, because hearts are kind of being expelled out of his mouth and everything. And
yeah.
It's kind of odd that I don't think it ever gets brought up past this book. We'll have to keep an eye out. But dwarves are just exist in this universe and nobody really talks about it.
They're not brought up very often.
Are they an actual race, like our old school dwarves, or are they just, short wizards? I mean,
it is a good question. I really do need to start bringing my book, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, more often. Because that may have a more definitive answer. If they're not in the book,
it raises
then maybe
questions, I guess. Where it's like, okay, we have house elves, we have regular dwarves, we have goblins, which I always kind of consider them to be like the dwarves of the universe and everything and stuff, since, how that all works, but, no, that's not really how that goes.
No, dwarves and goblins are clearly different creatures.
Yeah. It doesn't it's one of those things where I'm just sort of sitting here scratching my head a little bit as I'm trying to figure out, okay, so if we've got house elves and regular dwarves and stuff, do we have, traditional elves? How much of Tolkien's influence is actually in the universe and we just don't ever reference it or anything,
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if Rowling took some inspiration from, Tolkien in that department. But the dwarf thing still kind of scratches my head a little bit because it's so irrelevant.
So,
what I mean?
Yeah. Looking it up, they're mentioned in the first book because Harry mentions that he sees some in the tavern.
Okay.
We first see them in this book. They are apparently in Prisoner of Azkaban, or at least mentioned. I'm not 100% sure about what the context is in it because we're not on that book and I don't remember. And they appear in the video games for Order of the Phoenix and it's only as an insulting nickname only in the Danish version. So, and then they appear in the Chamber of Secrets video game
as the singing Valentine.
Probably.
I wouldn't be shocked too much, but it's one of those things where I'm like, huh.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's just a throwaway that never gets mentioned again.
They're not relevant to the rest, to the majority of the series, and it's more of a plot point that they're even brought up in the actual book itself.
It's mentioned that they're a humanoid creature, so they are their own distinct species.
Yeah.
So not just small wizards.
This raises a question, though, that they don't really have, I don't know how, Britain does things and stuff, but usually there's some sort of dance or something along those lines around Valentine's Day. This kind of chapter implies very much that they don't have a Valentine's Day thing going on at all, and it's only because of Lockhart being there and insisting on it that any celebration for the Hallmark holidays actually brought up.
It's also really weird that this is the only, non-Christian holiday that they mention in the book that they don't celebrate. Well, and I guess Halloween, too, but that's... Because, it's just weird that a bunch of wizards and witches celebrate Easter and Christmas as Easter and Christmas and not Yule and Ostara.
To be fair, that's the big stuff, but I'm pretty confident I've heard some Christian readings of the actual series itself and stuff, very much pointing out a lot of influences from Christianity and stuff. I know you're
Not Christian?
Not Christian. I was trying to remember the actual religion
Pagan.
that you...
Pagan is a identifier, yes.
Yeah. I have to admit, though, there are some really good fan fictions that I vaguely remember in the past that actually did point out the oddity of the fact that witches and wizards would be celebrating Christian holidays. And I kind of thought that added a little bit of extra spice to it. They kind of, like... It was one of those things that would really kind of help separate the the blood purists and the Muggleborn and everything if a lot of the old guard celebrated holidays that were a lot more closer to the old pagan religions and stuff, whereas the new guard was, of course, more, you know what I mean? Not because
purebloods celebrate the old
yeah, and that
pagan
doesn't
holidays, and more the Muggle mix.
It would
and less radical.
Yeah, well, it's not about how
radical.
Yeah, I could easily see the Weasleys celebrating pagan, like, you know what I mean. It's not about like good and evil in that. It's about like the more traditional families that are like born and raised in the wizarding world.
Yeah,
would
that's
have
fair.
Different holidays compared to the Muggle.
I guess more what I meant, but
I've always kind of felt like that would have been a really cool overarching idea to have a lot more of a cultural difference between those. It would make the divide more
like
noticeable.
purebloods would stick around more to using quills and everything, whereas more Muggle-born families would be like pencils, paper, notebooks.
Like,
we're not getting parchment paper.
Like, seriously, it's one of those things where it's like it would. I feel like having those differences would really add to the actual conflict of the series as a whole and everything. Mind you, not my series. Rowling did what she did and everything, but I definitely feel like it would have added some serious spice to the overarching series. Not to mention, we never really get an opportunity for them to have any dances or parties that you'd have at a normal school and everything. I really do feel like, because we only get the Yule Ball in fourth year,
I feel like
that's the only mention of it. And I'm just sort of like, you're telling me that we have a private school and there's no major, like, dancing events.
I feel like that's more indication
of
private schools, though. I feel like, and please, anybody out there who's listening, please leave us notes in the comments if you went to a private school,
because we're all public school kids.
And of course, we're using U.S. terminology. If any of you are from the UK,
oh, yeah, because their private would be
their public school. I think is considered private. Is what we consider private school,
and it's different.
They have a different name, I think. Yeah. Anyway, but let us know how your experiences at private schools were. And it could also be an American versus UK thing, because I know that some of your friends have gone to private school, and they still had school dances, I believe.
They went to Christian schools, I think, specifically.
It was a private school.
Yeah, but it was based.
So if you're not going to your district school, it's a private school.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. I mean,
the church, the school we're talking about, Our Lady of the Lakes, is a private school. It's not a public school.
But it's also a Catholic school, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. A lot of private schools are religious based. But I believe that they still had school dances and things.
I would like to think so.
So it might be more of a American versus UK thing, that they don't have dances.
Looping back around to the beginning of the chapter and everything, we do get a touch up on Hermione finally recovering and stuff.
It takes her like 2 to 3 months, I realized, because in the movie it was made
several
seem like,
weeks, yeah.
Well, because it's like February or March by the time that she's released from the hospital wing.
It's Christmas. Yep.
When it happened, so it's like 2 to 3
months. It's Christmas when she gets the enchantment on her. Or like when she backfired potion. And we're getting all the way up to Valentine's Day, and she's still not quite recovered yet.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So that's 6 weeks there, and then she's there for a little bit longer. So it's like, like 2 months she's in the hospital.
She spent most of her this school year in the hospital wing.
Oh my gosh, she does.
I'd still bet on Hermione being top of her class in terms of like end of year.
Oh, absolutely.
Education.
There was no end of year exams. Remember, she cried.
Yeah, she was very upset about that.
But Hermione, you weren't there for half the year anyway. I mean, she still got to do her homework and everything the first time around.
This time, yeah.
But to be fair, though, while she's in there, she could probably still get her homework done and everything. So
Man.
it's not like she's incapable of keeping up on it.
It's
So
a
the
good
cutoff
thing-
point would have been a little
It's a
bit
good
later.
thing final exams got canceled. Well, maybe. Man, do you think Snape would have purposely flunked Hermione for not being in potions? Be like, oh, she didn't do any of her assignments. So what if she? So what if she had homework? She wasn't there to brew any potions. So fail.
Your participation grade has killed your chances of graduating this year, sadly. Yeah. It sounds like something he would actually do.
Sounds exactly like Snape.
Yeah, but he probably didn't bother failing. He probably wouldn't bother flunking her out because he's like, oh, she would just complain to the headmaster and I'd have to give her a special exam.
Or worse, he'd have to deal with her an extra year, which I feel like Hermione, outside of the fact that she'd be distraught having failed, would also kind of be like, I'm doubling down now, and she'd be even more Hermione in like the next couple those times. Snape might be a jerk, but he might actually have some forethought where he's like, maybe this would be not so hot of an idea.
I just thought of something. Another perfectly good reason that it shows that Snape was never intended to be the hero character that he was in the beginning. Snape is a dick to Hermione, who is a Muggle-born. You think he would have learned his lesson with Lily about not treating people shitty just because of their blood status.
Nope.
But it also proves that Snape, even after that whole revelation, still not a good person.
Arguably, though, you could chalk it up to him intentionally trying to keep his identity a secret. As a turncoat and everything. Because, like, some of the other characters have gone on record saying that they didn't think he was actually gone. So it's like, you know?
That doesn't mean he has to be as big. But he purposely goes out of his way.
Oh, yeah, he does.
To be a dick to Hermione as well. Which doesn't make any sense. Anyway, back to this chapter.
Yeah, so we finally get her being discharged from the actual hospital and everything, and
was she getting discharged?
Yeah. They went to go pick her up and everything, and they ended up...
Oh, and then they got distracted by the argument or the commotion of Filch.
Yeah.
Screaming upstairs. I wonder how many profanities Hogwarts students learn from Filch.
There's a couple of occasions where they actually have, like, Hermione scolding Ron for his language and all this other stuff. So it's a very distinct possibility that they could possibly have some characters or people running around that are like...
But it's never when he says, like, bloody hell. It's when he says Merlin's baggy underpants or something.
Merlin's beard, usually. But those are the clean ones. Those are the ones that are okay to put on the print, basically, you know?
No, they were visiting Hermione.
Oh, okay.
And then they snatch... Of course she has...
No. She left the hospital being de-whiskered, tailless, and fur-free at the beginning of February. So, like, 5 to 6 weeks. But still. So, they were visiting her, and then they were on their way back to the Gryffindor Tower when Filch was yelling.
Okay. But we're, of course, skipping over the most important fact that she has a get well letter from her favorite professor under her fucking pillow.
I have to admit, after all the crap she's already had to put up with and everything, I'm kind of surprised that she's still holding that torch, all things considered. But, you know, the fact of the matter is it's a flaw for Hermione, and I definitely like it, since in the movies they do make her a little too perfect, you know?
You know, in the movies, they don't really give her much of the starstruck over the actor. Or not over the...
No, that really went to
Lockhart.
Molly.
Yeah, and, like, they have a little bit of her being like, oh, it's probably, you know, he's just fine, it's whatever, but it's not, like, love-struck.
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of appreciate that it's toned down in a visual format.
Because it would be so cringe.
It'd be so cringe, as well as the fact that it's one thing to write it out, but it's another thing to make a child actor act that way towards an adult.
Yeah.
It's kind of gross, and I do appreciate the directors for not making it gross.
But I do appreciate in the written word that Hermione has this character flaw.
Yeah, because, like, we all know that teenagers are cringe. Teenagers are cringe.
We like what we like.
Yeah,
Don't
so
judge us.
it's very obvious that, yes, people will actually act, even kids or teenagers will act like this in real life. But that's a kid cringing on their own. It's different to direct a child to be this way. And it'd be weird.
Mitchell has thoughts.
On the one hand, I like the idea of remaining true to the actual series.
But on the other hand, I can see your point.
Yeah, I really don't need to see basically the equivalent of an 11-year-old girl having a thing for,
a 30-year-old man?
Yeah, if not older, considering we have actors who are actually not the ages they're technically supposed to be. Alan Rickman. Bless his heart and everything. He's definitely not, like, a 30-something in terms of appearance,
Yeah. And, yeah. Anyway. So.
We basically move on from that point and everything, with them actually going and talking to Myrtle and everything after, like, getting interrupted and overhearing the conversation with Filch and stuff.
We'll admit, Myrtle's escapade tantrum here, much better in the movies. I just love the portrayal of that in the movies. 20 points if it goes through her stomach! 50 points if it goes through her head!
Punches Ron.
Poor Ron.
Ron.
Forgot Harry made that comment in the book. And poor Ron gets beat on in the movie for it.
Did Harry say
Harry made the comment about, well, it's not like it hurts. You can't feel anything in the book. Ron said it in the movie.
Ron is very insensitive to ghosts in the movies.
You're not wrong on that front, all things considered. Like,
you're right. Ron does get the shit of all the comments. Anything that's bad, Ron gets it.
Yeah, I mean, fair. But we do get, like, the whole thing with the mandrakes and everything, and I'm still kind of like, they seem disturbingly sentient for something we're basically going to chop up and
this is something.
Wait, why? What happened with the mandrakes?
Hold on, pause. This is something, talking about the mandrakes and turning them into potion or stew or whatever they said, is something as a kid I was like, okay, yeah, that's just something that happens.
Oh, yeah.
But then listening to it, she's like, once they outgrow their acne, we'll be ready to repot them. And after that, it won't be long until we're chopping them up and putting them in the potion.
Maybe they just chop the leaves off and the roots are fine?
It's never said.
They're very human-like in some of their behaviors that are described.
The cry of a mandrake.
I would... Maybe. Because where do the next mandrakes come from? Do they give birth?
Are they pollinated?
Maybe they just take the leaves and the roots get put back together and they reproduce. I'm
just saying, it's a little... Morbid, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not like, we have no idea how sentient they are, or, like, what's going on and stuff along those lines.
Sentient enough to throw parties.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things, yeah.
Sentient enough to be aware that they
sentient enough to be
mate.
moody.
And moody.
Because she said that they were being moody at some point.
They act, yeah, they
You know what? We're getting
like...
into some dungeon meshy stuff here.
Just a smidge, ain't it? Oh, man. We kind of already tucked on, like, the whole thing with Myrtle and everything. I do like how Harry just seems to have this natural pull towards the plot, in a sense. And, like, because they don't even have a reason to be back at Myrtle's bathroom.
Yeah,
and they never mention really going back to visit her.
They're just being nosy-ass teenagers.
They're like, there's got to be something here we missed. It's like these detectives, basically, that don't have a bloody freaking clue.
And they find a book. And, of course, Harry goes straight to pick it up. Ron, with some caution here, it's like, wait a minute. Books can be dangerous. Is that why he doesn't do his homework? Because his books are dangerous.
He's heard too much stories from his dad in the ministry.
And Harry's like, here's these horrifying stories of things that have happened.
Pauses for a minute and
he goes, no biggie.
We're not going to find out anything otherwise.
No sense of self-preservation. We're going to see that a lot in book 3.
How this kid becomes an orb.
God knows.
I mean...
Bad writing.
To be perfectly honest, with as dense as he can possibly be, I don't think he'd be any less of a danger to himself in the Auror office than if he was at Madame Malkin's every, robes for every occasion. But yeah, we do after he picks the book up and everything. I like how Harry keeps like flipping through it and everything, and you get the distinct impression that there's actually some magical pull, especially going back through it and everything. You're like, huh.
Well, and then
I wonder if that has some sort of like enticement enchantment for you to be attached to it or to want to write in it in order to start the actual process.
It does. Think about the locket.
I didn't think about.
No, they were drawn into wearing it.
I was thinking about the Horcrux because Harry even mentions that it's got the name T.M. Riddle, and he's like, he's not sure why, but he feels like he's heard that name before. And I'm like, I wonder. You've only got part of the bastard soul in you.
Yeah, but you
Harry's intuition is not intuition. It's another person's life.
I think I was actually listening to the fourth book and everything on a whim. And they do mention one of the classes they have with Moody and everything. And he mentions that there was another voice in his head when dealing with the Imperious Curse and everything. And it does kind of make me wonder just...
Aha! My theory about the Sorting Hat is correct. The Voldemort in him talks to him too much.
It does, honestly, that would be a really crazy concept if, like, the little piece of Voldemort that was actually inside of him started acting like a devil on the shoulder, basically, to try and corrupt Harry over the course of the series.
That explains so much of Book 5. Is that
all the horrible impulse thoughts? Yeah,
it's Voldemort accessing Harry more to try and manipulate how he acts. But Harry's was a lot more angsty, angry, constantly in Book 5. So maybe Voldemort reaching into his brain and whatever, the connection of Voldemort being back, made the fragment of soul in him more active.
Did you... I'm kind of surprised. I thought
I always wrote it off as teenage angst, man.
Fair enough. I've been in like a lot of Harry Potter. Like I've stalked certain Harry Potter discussions and stuff and theories and stuff, and that is actually a theory that a lot of people have passed around. How much I've never really looked into like the validate like the.
I mean, I would believe it. I never really thought that far into it. Like I kind of had that impression.
Well, there was a scene where he explicitly wanted to hurt Dumbledore.
Yeah, that part I knew and was obvious, but I meant for his actions throughout the whole book, he's very not Harry-like.
Yeah.
For a lot of the book.
Like, he just went through a really hard time, watched a person die and everything, has been basically on his own in terms of information. He's not in the most stable of emotional places at that point in time either, so it would mean that he could be more susceptible to it in a sense as well. So I feel like I don't want to chalk it all of Harry's bad shit and behavior and like the way he's acting is entirely.
No, you gotta save some of it for the actual.
But
hormones.
I feel like some of it is him. Like
fair. I just meant more like that could be more of a reason. I mean, granted, I also know that part of the reason is that's the only book that wasn't edited. But anyway.
Yeah. We get the actual after we get the book and everything, and we get the official announcement for Valentine's Day, which we already kind of talked about and everything.
They also they also mentioned that Peeves continuously sings "Oh Potter, you rotter" in the hallways. He has not stopped doing that.
Yeah,
between him and Malfoy, it's a wonder people aren't just sick and tired of people talking about Harry around him. To be honest,
Harry Potter this and Harry Potter that. And, oh my God, can we just have a school year?
It does explain why in year 4 the good chunk of the school kind of turns on because they're just sort of
fuck Harry Potter.
Another event. Come on, Potter. Can we have something that doesn't revolve around you? And Harry's like,
third year.
Yeah.
Third year is the only one that people don't actively know that it's revolving around Harry.
The adults have their suspicions, but yeah,
true. But the students aren't as aware that Harry would be the, target.
Yeah.
As much. But every other year, all the students are like, "Oh, Harry Potter again."
I do have to admit, though, when we actually have the little poem read and everything, that, this is like a nightmarish scenario. He's got Ginny there. he's got Malfoy there, and he's got Percy there, and I'm just sort of like, I couldn't imagine more like the only thing that can make this worse is if Snape was hanging around
right.
too.
God, just strike me down
And
with lightning
Lockhart.
right now.
Oh God! Oh no! Yeah, I mean, I guess
Lockhart was there.
I guess I
Well,
could put
I
my
guess with
foot in my mouth.
With
'Cause
Lockhart, I feel like it would be embarrassing, but I could also tell myself, Lockhart did this. He's the reason why this is happening.
Yeah,
He made
but
this, whatever.
that might actually go from embarrassment to anger, basically. So that
Yeah.
would be
Because
that,
Lockhart would be.
But I wouldn't be as mortified.
I feel like Lockhart would be jealous that the attention's not on him. Although he could have saved Harry. He could have distracted everybody with something.
oh, man.
No, because then he would have been like, Harry, stop making things and going to your head bullshit. Like he's always done.
I
do
will say, real quick, sorry. For all of you out there, if you have not heard the audio version of the Chamber of Secrets with specifically the Valentine's chapter, I deeply recommend listening to it
10 out of
because
10 recommend. Who's the narrator?
I am pulling that up now.
Because God bless this man. He
Which
needs a
we
raise.
Oops, wrong app. That's wrong app. It is Jim Dale.
God bless that man. He needs a raise.
Because he sang that song. So please go listen to it. But Mitch, you had something you wanted to say.
I do find it kind of funny that a majority of the people that are in audience are the person they suspected, Malfoy, the person who actually did it, Ginny, and the red herring that is Percy. All three of them are actually mentioned when the diary spills out and everything.
That's true.
They do actually make a note that Ginny looked at the diary, and you could still, on your first reading, chalk that up to her being embarrassed for him, basically, of, oh, that's Harry's diary.
It's like Ginny looks from the diary to Harry in terror.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're like, oh God, she feels bad for Harry. But now reading through, you're like,
oh,
shit.
she's like oh
about
no,
to
yeah,
spill.
like, Tom's gonna sell me out, basically, because I try to get rid of this thing.
See, when you were saying before that this is a perfect example of a good mystery novel, this is one of those moments that make it a good mystery novel. Of looking back, oh shit.
You could see, and if you're paying attention, you could piece things together as well.
Right.
Which I feel is the mark of a good mystery novel, is if you, the reader, can figure it out as you go along. I don't like it when
I want to see the book for a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead and keep talking.
But yeah, the whole thing with like we of course get the first use from Harry for Expelliarmus,
Which
knocking.
I'm surprised Expelliarmus worked in the way he used it.
To be fair, a book could be used as a bludgeoning weapon, so he could, he disarmed Malfoy.
It's a disarming term.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Oh.
I mean, it could be a worse. It could be like the Snape's spell where it would literally just cut your arm off.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you are disarmed. You don't have it attached to your body anymore, but you are disarmed. But I have to admit, like, that whole thing. Fred and George end up actually singing the song as well, apparently, because Harry ends up going to bed early because he was sick and tired. I am convinced Fred and George were somehow responsible for this situation. Ginny seems mortified by this whole thing, even more so than Harry is to a degree. So it wouldn't strike me as odd if she wrote the poem, her brothers found out about it,
Her twin
and
chaotic brothers
sent it in basically to
As a
actually
joke.
be sent. Because they aren't mentioned as being there, and yet they're capable of singing it without any issues whatsoever.
Here's another thought.
So I'm
Do
sure
we-
you could chalk
Does
it up to
do
the
they
school
confirm
talking
that
about
Ginny
it, but come
wrote
on.
it?
No, but
It's important.
you
Yeah.
have to imply that based on the fact that she's mortified. She looks totally embarrassed, and not just because her crush is standing in front of her being embarrassed, but then also later on when Fred and George are singing it back. It's like, yeah, there's no way they had to have stolen that Valentine's letter from Ginny and given it to the dwarf or something.
I like it as a really, really good headcanon. I'm not going to say that's exactly what's happening. I'm not going to tell other people that this is gospel or anything. But I love the idea that
Yes.
Fred and George are involved in this in some way, shape, or form, because they're taking way too much glee in all of this.
Except for the fact that there's no mention of Ginny looking mortified.
I thought she was.
Nope. Looking through it, he mentions that the group of first years happens to include Ginny. The next mention of Ginny is when she looks at the diary.
But what
Looking
does it
terrified.
say but at that point the dwarf hadn't started singing.
No, by the time she looks at the diary terrified, it's after the dwarf sang. But between him mentioning that Ginny was in the crowd, it doesn't say anything about Ginny looking mortified.
Huh. Interesting.
So, there's also the possibility that she didn't write it,
And the twins did.
and the twins just wrote it because they're shitheads.
Chaos.
I feel like the fact that she, like, I really, she's like the only person in the entire story that's actually been mentioned to have any hidden feelings towards Harry. So it does strike me as very odd that we wouldn't bring Ginny up if she wasn't involved in the singing thing
Can you just
to some degree.
I found something. It happens afterwards. It's when Malfoy yells spitefully at Ginny, "I don't think Potter liked your Valentine." She covers her face with her hands and runs into class. But that's just Malfoy speculating that her look of horror or the way that she was looking was because of the Valentine.
It's not exactly a smoking gun, but it also doesn't disprove any of the possibilities for the situation.
It could just be. I'd like to just go with Fred and George wrote the poem because they're chaos, or it could have been literally any student in the school.
I mean, you can take that to the bank and cash it. I'm not going to give you grief one way or the other. I've got plenty of headcanons about this entire series that are completely out of left field and improbable to begin with. So it's like, you know what? Whatever. I'm not really one to give any grief on that department. Let's see here. After that, we eventually have Harry actually, like, writing in the diary, because he discovers that after all of his other stuffs are all damaged and everything, but the diary is suspiciously pristine. So he starts ending up, like, setting it off and everything. Oh, shoot, I completely forgot. We missed out on Lockhart talking about, like, a love potion with Snape and charms with Flitwick and everything. And how, like, Flitwick looks downright embarrassed that this is one of his peers.
Snape looks murderous.
Like,
Snape's
you
gonna
asked me, I'm feeding you poison.
I mean, I gotta be honest with you, like, the whole thing with the damn, love potions already is kind of date rapey to begin with and everything.
So this is the one time I'll side with Snape.
Yeah, pretty much.
You asked me to make you a love potion, I will feed you poison.
So we also totally glossed over the fact that when they find the journal, Ron remembers something for once. The name, T.M. Riddle. He's like, oh, I know that name.
Especially,
because
special
services to the school, because he had to clean that trophy after accidentally
spilling.
Yeah, because you mentioned Harry saying he said it sounded familiar.
But,
but it wasn't. It was Ron said that he knew that name.
I thought Harry had that feeling though too.
Maybe later that he feels like, man, he just knows something about that name in this chapter, but not when they find it.
Fair.
But he does pocket it because
Harry,
you pocketed a wet, gross book.
Yeah.
Listen, Harry is looking for something suspicious, and it is kind of wild that of all the places that this thing could have gotten disposed of, it was this location, basically, where the scene of the crime originally occurred. So the scene of the first crime, because I don't think we ever actually revisit any of the other locations where somebody got attacked. It's just like, well, this is like the one place we actually know for certain something bad in fact did happen, so we've got to keep chugging along, so to speak.
You also, by the way, mentioned that her mention is that this is one of the times where Harry did not give a fuck about house points when he uses magic in the corridors. And Percy's like, I'm gonna report you. And Harry's like, fuck it.
5 points off is worth getting one over on Malfoy. It is kind of a bit of a change up and everything with how house points become a lot less important over the course of the series. It was this really big thing in first year. By the end of the series, we don't give a.
Well,
we're breaking into Gringotts, bitches.
In first year, Gryffindor hadn't won the House Cup in years, and so they finally won it because Harry was a baller and broke school rules, and Dumbledore was just like, well, we're gonna make it work. So Harry probably is just like, all right, I did it for him once. Dumbledore will probably make it happen again. I don't fucking care.
Also, good. Another thing that was brought. Okay, so it mentions that, like, they're like, why would somebody try and flush away a diary that has nothing in it, but it's from 50 years ago? Because they're stupid. Obviously, there's something special about the diary. Duh.
Well, yeah,
you don't flush it down the toilet, you're just gonna cause a clog. Obviously,
yeah. How big
you
are
find
the toilets?
a fire!
How big are the toilets? I'm so confused about the pipes at Hogwarts.
They're big enough to fit a basilisk, okay?
That's not exactly a small snake.
We've seen that skin.
Well, I guess you'd need a pretty big one to get those clogs out.
The sexual innuendos just write themselves at this point. We got a giant snake going down a long pipe.
Maybe it's more like a hot dog in a hallway, though. In the movies, that's what it looks like. That snake has plenty of wiggle room.
Well, we don't know how big that snake was gonna get.
It could have gotten bigger.
I mean,
Maybe he's a shower, not a. Maybe
reptiles
he's a grower,
technically
not
don't
a
stop
shower.
growing if they don't die, right? It's one of the species that does that.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, alligators.
Alligators.
Damn
What is this, New York? Anyway,
Yeah,
they have
rats.
turtles.
we actually finally get the first.
Rats.
Like, I feel like at this
Sewer
point,
rats.
the plot really starts to kick off with the old diary reveal of Hagrid being the one supposedly responsible for opening the Chamber of Secrets. I personally, as a person, if I was in this situation, I'd have a hard time thinking that Hagrid would have been smart enough to actually figure out a way into the Chamber of Secrets. You know what I mean? Like, as much as it's mean towards Hagrid in a sense, I feel like Tom probably was even a little insulted that people believed that, that Hagrid was capable of it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, this is an easy patsy, but on the other hand, I'm kind of irritated that it worked so well because it shouldn't work at all.
Well, Tom, you can't be mad because you fucking did it.
He probably bragged to all his followers later, like, actually, I opened the Chamber of Secrets, which also explains how Lucius knew who the heir of Slytherin was. Is that Voldemort would never want his credit to go unnoticed.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
It does raise some questions about how much Lucius actually knew about what the diary was capable of and how much he was informed of. Because it seems pretty clear that he didn't realize it was a piece of Voldemort's soul, in a sense. Because he was definitely very lackadaisical.
You never would have thrown it into Hogwarts.
Yeah. The diary does stick out like a bit of a sore thumb when it comes to the actual Horcruxes and stuff, as it seems to be capable of rebuilding, basically, Voldemort from a certain point in his life, basically, without any serious downsides. It's almost a form... It's like so much more evolved than everything else.
It's like the perfect Horcrux.
I realize...
Okay, think about it this way. This thing works. There is now a teenage Riddle, a teenage Voldemort, running around, basically, while we've also technically got Voldemort Prime up north and everything. What happens when two Voldemorts...
Old Voldemort's mind with young Voldemort's body.
And depending on how you split the Horcruxes and stuff, is the version of, like, if you split it in half, or split pieces of yourself off, or is it half each time? Going based off of how you would do the math of dividing your soul to create a Horcrux, theoretically speaking, this is the most Voldemort is.
Are you breaking a piece, or is it...
Are you halving your soul every time? I'm pretty confident they implied that you are halving it.
Because each time you're less human.
Yeah. So it would help
explain... The
explain...
that he uses to revive himself is the least Voldemort.
Yeah,
Well,
like
almost.
in some way,
is the least because Nagini was made afterwards.
but that means that like Harry himself at some point would technically have more of Voldemort's soul in him than Voldemort's prime body does.
True.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it was mentioned because like he was starting. The stronger the diary Voldemort became, the more he started to remember. Because he knew who Harry was, he knew Harry was his downfall. I think he started.
No, Ginny told him
Yeah.
that specifically. They go into a whole thing and everything when he's explaining at the end of the story, like then who were to find it, but the person I was most interested in actually meeting and stuff. Because Ginny tells him all of this stuff, and because she's got a massive crush on him and everything.
Okay.
It's obvious that she would talk about Harry a lot in terms of the actual series, and of course. Tom, existing 50 years in the past, basically, would have no knowledge of anything going on in the outside world because Voldemort's not writing in his own fucking diary, and I doubt Lucius is going to, like, do anything with it either. You know what I mean? Ginny was probably the
could you
first...
see Lucius in his little manner? My dark lord, this is what happened today.
Oh... That irritable peasant punched me in the face. It was horrible. Oh, it'll take forever for my face to heal and everything, and I'll be back to my nice, pristine, perfect face.
My hair will never be the same.
No.
Okay, maybe at some point the other piece of Voldemort would have been able to merge with.
The only way that would happen is if you had true remorse of the actions that you'd taken in order to create the Horcrux. So they wouldn't have been capable of refusing together. It's
Paradox rules, one of them would have died.
Or one of them could have gone into, like, a hibernation state or something. I have no idea.
Or
it's one of those things where...
It's possible that the pieces of the soul wouldn't have gone back together, but he could have either used the older piece, the bit that was up in hiding, to create a new Horcrux. He would have to murder it, or he would basically do what he did to Ginny and absorb it. Not the soul piece, but he would absorb the essence of.
These are some of the questions I would love to just throw down at Rowling's feet and everything. Be like, all right.
I think
like,
she just didn't think that far ahead.
Well, to be fair, a lot of people have suspicions that the whole Horcrux thing wasn't actually a thing that was fully created until after book 2, and that this diary was created as a Horcrux in
it was retrospectively.
It was
made
retroactively. Yes, that's the word. Retroactively made into one.
That's very possible that this was just a way to bring Voldemort back into power. She would have figured, but it was never meant to actually work, so she didn't have to worry about the details.
Yeah, because the plot basically says that it dies here, regardless.
Yeah. So
it's but
conveniently,
we're in the realm of fan fiction, but I still love.
It would have been an
interesting
theory. It would be interesting to know what would have happened.
Yeah. Definitely.
I just realized major problem. A major thing that Voldemort should have, or that Dumbledore didn't do. Why was it not common knowledge? Why was it not made common knowledge that Voldemort was Tom Riddle?
They explain it at the end of the series that Voldemort went out of his way to differentiate, to disown that name. He didn't like it to begin with, even when he's talking about it to Harry and everything. And so... here's the thing. He doesn't tell anybody else. The Death Eaters don't seem to bring it up. The ones that do know, if they do know. The rest of society has no association with Tom and Voldemort himself. And Dumbledore's not the type of person that's going to dead name somebody. Okay? That's just not how he works.
Except for
the fact that this is basically like saying, yeah, I know who the Joker is, but I'm not going to tell anybody.
I mean, to be fair, Batman does know who the Joker is in certain continuities. He doesn't tell anybody. Because it's not important. That's not who he is anymore.
But the point is that it should be... It's one of those things that once... It should be made public knowledge that this individual was Voldemort. Because then you can also make sure that the things that he did as Tom Riddle came to light or were tied to Voldemort in crimes. Also, removing his name from special awards kind of important. Also, the fact that the school literally had an air of Slytherin. Like, oh yeah, Voldemort went to school with the air of Slytherin. Maybe we should keep an eye on that. Or revisit this. Or something. I'm just saying that not telling the world who Tom Riddle was kind of dumb. It doesn't make sense.
To be fair, how difficult would it be for anybody to actually go into the information and find out? My thought process on this is it's irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't change the fact that people are terrified of him. It doesn't change the fact that nobody's capable of fighting him off. Them knowing does not change the circumstances revolving around the fact that the bastard's going around killing everybody. I know your real name! Cool! I don't care! You're not joining me, you're dying. So it doesn't matter.
If Dumbledore had been like, yes, or if everybody had known that Tom Riddle was Voldemort, Harry Potter would have looked at this journal and been like, oh, Voldemort. We should get this to Dumbledore. Because why would Voldemort's diary be here? Thank goodness. Or Ginny Weasley would have been like, huh, how did this random notebook that belonged to Voldemort get here? Maybe I should give this to my dad. If this was common knowledge that Voldemort was Tom Riddle. Obviously, for the plot point, it wouldn't have, you can't have people knowing. But, realistically, his name absolutely would have been put out to the public.
I feel
no, because they were terrified of saying
pause.
his fake name. What makes you
Pause.
think they're going to tell you his real one?
History.
Hold on, pause.
Hitler
Pause.
didn't go around talking about with a pseudonym name.
I've said it 4 times. Pause. I have a point to make.
Yeah, Brandy never talks. Let her talk.
Mitchell has a very good point that it does become irrelevant. I feel like history books, because at this point, well, up until Harry started school, they're like, Voldemort's dead. Harry killed him somehow. I do agree that at that point, in the history books, they would have been like, yes, this mass murderer Voldemort, real name Tom Riddle. At that point, like in the history books,
we know that fucking Hitler went to art school. We can know that Voldemort's name was Tom Riddle. Mitch, you had a real.
I have a counterpoint.
Okay, I'll allow it.
We know who a lot of serial killers are, but
Uh-huh.
we never use their real names. We use their pseudonyms. The bind torture, the BTK killer. We know his name. We know his whole history, but we still call him the BTK killer. We've gotten a lot of evidence about who the Zodiac killer is and everything. We still call him the Zodiac killer.
well, that's because
His identity is not confirmed.
Yeah,
That one's not necessarily as strong. But there are actual people. They did release a documentary recently and stuff along those lines that actually more or less completely proves who the person was based off of documented information from kids who knew the guy when he was a teacher.
Oh, for Zodiac?
It's a really good documentary. I totally recommend it. But the thing is, though, is that they don't use. When we refer to a lot of well-known serial killers,
We refer to them by their alias.
Yes, and they were so terrified of using the word Voldemort. We're like 3 layers deep on this one. His name is Tom Riddle. He disappeared as Tom Riddle for, I think it was said, about 20 years.
And came back as Lord Voldemort.
And gone by Lord Voldemort ever since, in order to even more separate himself. And then add that to the fact that he's going around killing people and stuff. People became so terrified of saying the word Voldemort that they started calling him He Who Must Not Be Named. We are 3 layers away from basically the name of a person that he has gone out of his way to bury in every sense of the word.
That's fair, but...
And like I said, Dumbledore isn't... Dumbledore plays, even, I'm pretty confident he calls him Tom, at least in the movies to some degree.
Oh, yeah,
But he's not, he is one of the people that keeps his cards
to Voldemort, he calls him Tom.
so close to the chest. And part of me kind of wonders if part of the reason he keeps his mouth shut on this is to prevent people from finding him or retracing Voldemort's steps. You know what I mean? This is I don't need him getting any help.
It's to prevent other dark wizards from rising... doing what Voldemort...
Quirrell. Becoming another Quirrell, in a sense.
You know what? I'll allow that one.
Those are good points.
Those are good points.
I don't...
However, as an American who knows that that all history should be documented, should have shared his name. But anyway,
I also feel bad for Hagrid because the realization that Hagrid went to school with Tom Riddle and was expelled because of Tom Riddle. I feel like if Hagrid known, he'd been like, all right, it's on now.
I feel like I like the headcanon-y idea. I don't see it happening.
Does Hagrid know that Tom Riddle became Voldemort?
I don't
That's
think
what
it's
I was thinking of.
I don't think he...
Because you know what? If Ginny had showed Hagrid the fucking diary and it's like...
Yeah, I got
he would have been like, nope!
Yeah, he would have been like,
fuck that dude!
He'd be like, fuck that dude. He fucking got me expelled. And I'm a good person. Clearly, you know me, Ginny.
So somebody actually, here's a scary thought process. We don't know exactly what year it was when Hagrid got kicked out of school. We do know that he did not get a complete education. He has an incomplete education, and yet he is still very powerful as a magic user. I would love to know if part of the reason Hagrid got targeted and why he got thrown out so quickly compared to other cases of near murder, Harry against Malfoy and stuff along those lines, and what it comes to point. A lot of shit gets I think the twins almost kill somebody in book 5 at some point in time because they send him into the vanishing cabinet that's broken, and he was gone for weeks on end, and there was no repercussions towards them basically. But for some reason, when it comes to this accidental murder and stuff along those lines, he gets his wand snapped, kicked out of Hogwarts. Newt Scamander gets kicked out as well, but he gets to keep his wand.
Racism.
So I'm definitely wondering if there's some racism to the way he's been.
Also, we do know what year Hagrid got expelled from Hogwarts because it was 50 years ago, and we know what date Harry went to school.
It wasn't Hagrid in his third year.
He was in his third year.
So he's 3 years worth of education, and he's still pretty damn capable of... He's even capable of doing wordless magic with a broken wand.
Yeah.
And he's actually capable of shaking off stunners. Remember when the freaking Ministry comes after him and accidentally tag McGonagall? He's taking stunners. Yeah. He's taking spells and stuff. He's not fighting back using magic and everything. This guy... if he had been given a full education, stuff along those lines, and allowed to develop as a wizard for those 50 years, he would probably be one of the most powerful wizards in the British community and stuff along those lines.
And yet all he wants to do is be Steve Irwin.
I give you Samwise Gamgee in his physical opposite, because the guy's got a nice garden that he's super proud of. He's got a bunch of animals and stuff that he takes care of, and he sits in that place and continues to be gamekeeper until he is no longer physically capable of doing it, according to certain outside sources and stuff.
Fair.
So this man is basically the fusion of Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings and Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter himself.
I support it.
That is a good point. That him being, it's so easy for them to accept it, but they expel him, but he doesn't go to prison for murder.
I feel like it's like him being, what would have been 13 basically at the time. I feel like throwing him into Azkaban at the age of 13 would have been a step too far even for them. But man, Hagrid has such a hard life and everything, and it's moments like these I realize he could have been so thoroughly robbed of a much greater ability, if not not necessarily greater station in life. Because I feel like, he could have been the next Newt. Could you imagine full education and goes out into the world basically tracking down fantastic beasts and where to find them?
That'd be great.
He could have been he could have wrote the next book and stuff along those lines. We would have missed out on having Hagrid as our gamekeeper, but I really would love to see a universe where he's out there living his best life.
So I'm confused. I realized something. So one, you forgot to bring up the fact that the flashback that Harry has, or through that Tom shows him in the diary, starts without Tom Riddle being in the room.
Oh, that's
I made a comment about that while we were listening to this. How did you know about the parts you weren't there for? Was he spying in the peephole or something? I feel like he would have been attached to Tom. Basically, he would have popped up with him as he's walking up the stairs.
Yeah,
But also, so I realized something. So that in the flashback it says that people have been being attacked, right?
Yeah.
But only one person has died. Were
Yeah.
those people also being petrified?
Yeah, sorry. It feels like a very distinct possibility because that's the only explanation. Because if you get bit by the damn thing,
No.
you're dead.
Oh yeah, the poison. Yep.
Yeah.
But then if you look
Harry
at the eyes,
yeah.
you're dead.
Yeah.
But you
Between like
So
short
it's
of
like-
it like going around basically with its eyes closed and crushing people, like I'm guessing that this damn snake is just cursed. It is very unlucky when it comes to actually killing people. Because the one time it does kill somebody, it was because it was coming up. It was not intending. Like,
that was not the victim.
Yeah.
It was just, it happened to...
It just so happened that she got upset and looked out the freaking thing and looked it dead in the eyes. I'm like, how, like, this snake can't win from losing. The one person they ended up killing is the one time that it wasn't
And he
actually
didn't even
being
get to eat it.
Yeah,
Either.
Oh, God. That's just mean, because I do think they mentioned the fact that her body laid there for a while until one of the other girls was sent to go find her from one of the classes.
Yeah. So, it leaves a lot of questions about, like...
I feel so bad for that
the
poor snake.
repeating of actions, because like you think you would have known immediately. Like I know Dumbledore was like, "Oh, it means that the Chamber of Secrets really has been opened," but like,
Well, that would explain why he knew so for certain with Colin and everything.
so many. My bigger question is like, we have a better explanation for why each character in this book. We know why they weren't petrified,
Or why they were petrified and not killed.
or why they were petrified and not killed.
But
Norris was the water.
Yep.
Colin
was
Creevy
the-
was his camera.
That Hufflepuff boy was
Justin was
Justin was-
Saint Nick.
through,
Yep.
through Nick.
And
Yeah.
Hermione and
Had-
Penelope were
Had the
looking in
mirror.
a mirror because Hermione knew
She figured it out.
what the creature was. She figured it out. So the question is, how would...
Because you can't blame Myrtle for the
how
water.
You can't blame Myrtle for the
She
water.
was alive.
And
They were
most
attacked.
people wouldn't have known what the creature was.
But they would have given a description.
If they weren't
There would have
petrified-
been something
I
left,
know.
because if there was only one killing but there was attacks,
If
how
they
did that
weren't petrified,
work?
they had to have been petrified. But
But
how would they
would have been
known-
revived, so they
Yeah.
would have had some inkling of what they saw,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean, hold on, time out.
Can you obliviate
Colin never outside of Hermione, who we know already knew what it was before she was petrified. We never actually get a case of anybody talking about a first-hand experience with being petrified, or knowing if they had much of it, because it would have happened almost instantly. So you maybe would have had a second of
Well, then
maybe
how did-
seeing part of an obscured version
You
of
might
the
not
animal.
have been processing what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But we do get Myrtle knows what she saw. She
saw
saw the pair
golden-
of yellow eyes.
But that was all she remembers from the incident.
And that could have been...
We don't even know every magical creature in existence that could have had that ability.
But depending on where it could have just been so in her face that it was only a pair of eyes.
But
Snakes have eyes on the front of their face, right?
no,
If they're on the sides?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a very predatory thing.
Maybe the
Snakes don't
basilisk
use
is
their
built
eyes.
different.
I know.
They use
I know.
heat vision.
The basilisk
anyway.
could be built different.
But the
in terms of its eye placement and everything, because it's definitely an apex predator.
Yeah, but we also don't have confirmation that they didn't see completely what was coming.
But with that vagueness and everything, neither one of us can really. We don't have a smoking gun in that.
I would argue. I
Why
would
stop
argue
now?
that Colin saw something. He had enough time to pull his camera up to his
Yeah.
face. He saw something coming. Would have had enough. He could have heard it. True. He could have heard the slithering. But I would also argue that
If Harry is capable, if it's capable of making enough noise that Harry's capable of hearing its voice through the frickin' walls, I would imagine that it would be that it would have been enough noise for Colin to have been like, "Oh, I hear
disagree,
something."
because
I
Rob
grab
and
my
Hermione-
camera
Ron and Hermione have always said that they never heard anything when Harry heard
But, hold on.
whispering.
But that
Hold
was
on.
because
Where
there was the wall thing.
Did it say
if
where
it was
Colin
physically
was?
seeing him,
Mm.
Colin, you know what I mean? It's
Did-
one of those things
Did
where,
it say
and
where
here's
Colin
even
was
more.
found?
Yeah,
Because-
Colin could have had his camera on him the whole time. Like he was like he had the grapes under one arm and just got the camera out because he's like, I'm gonna
I mean,
sneak in there and
Not
take
that
a
he
picture.
dropped the grapes. They weren't.
Well, that's because how do you like? Depending on how he was holding the grapes, when he got petrified, I doubt he would have stood up. He would have probably fallen over. So he they still had the camera in his hand when they brought him in the movie. But there really isn't a description of his appearance based off of it in the book itself, and like how both hands.
Well, let's find out. Because yes, it does mention how he's found.
But I was thinking, if it says where Colin was found, and if it was outside of Myrtle's bathroom, maybe he heard the grinding stones of the chamber being opened. Or
If he was
even Ginny speaking parcel tongue while possessed to like open it and the snake coming out or whatever.
So, it doesn't say specifically where he was on the stairs, but it does say that his hands, plural, were stuck up in front of him holding his camera. So, he dropped the grapes to pick up his camera.
But why? Did he hear something? Did
he either
he
heard
smell
something or he saw something, probably.
And he may have saw like it was at night. He could have seen a shadow moving or something along those lines. You never Colin never actually talks about this incident ever again. You know what I mean? So we never even with
totally should have in the Defense Against the Dark Arts meeting, the DAD meeting.
Yeah.
I can
classes.
You know what? It sounds like he'd be part of that, but I don't know if he's ever actually mentioned being involved in that.
I think he was.
He's barely mentioned after this, though.
Except for his brother and to die.
Yeah.
I think the fourth book, he gets a couple of minor mentions because they're going out of their
gets picked up out of the lake by a kraken.
And he's just Dennis is just having his life. Oh, dude, I'm here for it. Dennis is Dennis is every single person who ever grew up reading with this series, basically.
So you would have to be right though, is that if the attacks that were happening previously resulted in petrified students. Because that's really the only explanation, is they would have had to be petrified students. Because, or they would have either seen something, known how they got attacked, or whatever. If they were petrified, that they didn't have enough time to process what it was. It's just a lot more really bad luck on the Basilisk part, because there would have been less opportunities for the Basilisk, unless they saw it through, a window. I need more information about Voldemort's first round go-around.
We're splitting a lot of freaking hairs on this one, and we're still not any closer to an actual, a satisfying explanation for how this shit works. Okay there, Sheldon, chill. I was quoting the meme. I don't need sleep, I need answers.
Yes,
I
don't need sleep, I need answers.
But, the whole thing is the more, leaving us here scratching our head a little bit. I'm just sort of oh, man. It does say a lot about Voldemort that no matter what point in his life and everything, he still can't seem to kill people very effectively unless they're fully grown adult wizards for some odd reason.
Who aren't holding a wand.
Yeah. I still find it kind of funny that he talks about...
Or muggles. He can kill
or
muggles.
old muggles.
Or, oh man, the whole thing with Voldemort is the more I talk about how unsuccessful he was on so many different occasions and everything, it's a real wonder.
He would have just given up at some point.
It's I'm just really bad at being bad.
Maybe he went to Darth Vader's school for stormtroopers.
No, Palpatine's school for stormtroopers. Right?
No, Palpatine was technically the Emperor. Yeah, you're not
Vader
wrong.
was just a figurehead. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
More or less.
He was an enforcer.
That's a whole another podcast we can get in, and trust me, I'll be more than happy to talk your ears off about Star Wars. But let's
love that,
man. But let's finish up the chapter because we're 103 right now. It's 9:41. It's getting kind of late and stuff.
Good thing I don't work tonight.
We got stuff to go over.
Yeah. We
Not much left.
oh freaking hell! We got the secret diary. We have the incident and
ow.
everything. Pixie did not appreciate that.
She's purring.
Yeah,
though.
we kind of do end up.
Hi.
We end the chapter with Hagrid being
With
captured and
Ron-
Harry waking up. Ron finding him basically on his bed.
Be like, it was Hagrid. Hagrid opened it.
And so the next chapter starts off with them basically trying to figure out when the best time to actually talk to him about it is. So we've hit everything. I mean,
I haven't accidentally let anything Matt and Harry loose around the castle, have you?
Matt and Harry, you guys
You
who
were
would
talking
talk
about
about me,
me,
would you? He's such a good sense of humor. That was a funny line.
Also, damn Harry, just immediately accepting that Hagrid did it. What the hell?
Like, you
But
know
the thing is, though,
Hagrid.
is that even Harry doesn't believe it was out of maliciousness. You know
That's
what I
fair.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, Harry's is like, I could totally see him being like hearing about a monster, and we all know he likes his. Like, we got a couple of chapters, and we get like prime evidence basically that
Look,
Hagrid has no quarrels. He would. If he's the one who found that basilisk and everything, he probably would have tried to like tame it to some degree.
In Harry's book, he's a fantastic beast and where to find him. He has it marked, or anything Hagrid likes for a Category 5 threat.
Oh my, yeah, it seems that.
He literally writes, or anything Hagrid likes, because everything Hagrid likes is a level 5 threat.
It's deadly.
Very deadly.
But yeah, that whole it. Did we talk about like the ongoing like a couple of the fan theories around the Chamber of Secrets and its original its purpose and everything?
I don't remember if we did.
I've had a couple of personal theories and stuff that the Chamber of Secrets and the Basilisk itself was not originally created to kill students within Hogwarts, but was a protection system that was originally created in case of an invasion. Yeah, and that it was originally.
Yeah, Basilisk is pretty
it
effective against your enemies.
Imagine you rock up with a bloody army and stuff along those lines, and this thing takes one look outside. And it would explain why it's able to get around so easily, because it would have meant that he would have intentionally built it so it could move around without necessarily interacting with the people inside of the castle any more than it needed
Like
to.
it would have been designed to protect.
Bypass.
Yeah.
So that way people in the school would not be killed by the basilisk just going from point A to point B.
You know what that does explain? That does explain how the fact that this fucking 4th century castle has plumbing.
They weren't originally designed with the idea of waste management in mind. It was designed with the idea that we've got a giant-ass fucking snake that can protect us in case of an emergency, getting around without accidentally killing the defenders of the castle.
It could also just be that
That makes a
Hogwarts was
lot-
magically adapting, but...
That also answers my question, because at the end of this chapter, I started thinking, why the hell did Salazar Slytherin put the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets in a girl's bathroom? It wasn't a girl's bathroom at that time.
bathroom at the time.
It wasn't. No, they've gone... I think as much as everybody likes to make fun of it, Rowling went on record about how they used to go to the bathroom basically by making the poop just disappear using a spell. So at a certain point in time, it was put in there. And I think it's gone on record that some of the members of the Gaunt family went out of their way to protect the location when it was originally installed. So the Gaunt family was responsible for a lot of the reasons that it wasn't discovered over the course of the years.
That's valid. The other theory also, of course, being just the fact that it was placed wherever it was placed, and then as the school magically adapted with upcoming times of what people were adding, the things that it
Hogwarts just incorporated it itself
to where it would fit. Be like, you made this girl's bathroom now, but the entrance to the secret chamber is here, so
now
it's a faucet.
Because I do like a lot of people have discussed.
But I like your Gaunt theory. That's a good one.
I don't remember exactly where I got it. I'm pretty confident that was from some sort of extra material from the series itself.
If you're the creator of that theory, shout out to you and drop a comment.
Yeah, if theory wise and everything. But I've read and read up on so much stuff that I don't like. It's all second and third hand and everything. But some people have gone on to say that during the time of Salazar Slytherin and stuff, Muggles were a legitimate problem in terms of hunting them down. So him being anti, spy as it were with Muggle-born students and stuff, kind of makes a little bit more sense for the time period considering his concerns.
True.
Whereas as time went on, his theories and philosophies would have been mutated into basically a form of racism that older wizarding families would have carried on in a sense. I like the idea of him being a misunderstood historical figure in a sense. You know what I mean? I like the idea anyway. Whether or not it's true is never been verified as far as I'm aware from Rowling or anything. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think book 1 and book 2, Slytherin's the evil house, and we had to have it got deeper and got more development as time went on.
Yeah.
Like with the Horcruxes and everything else that we've been discussing over the course of this chapter. We've hit the 110 mark and everything. Does anybody else have anything to add or mention for the actual chapter in question with the Mystery Secret Diary?
Nope.
I don't think so.
I like it's called the Very Secret Diary in the book, in the
secret.
book called The Chamber of Secrets. I wonder if that was an intended clue.
Maybe.
All right. Well, we can wrap things up here. You can find me on Twitch, Cole Sanders. I'm going to be. If I haven't already, I'm wrapping up Persona 4 Golden. We'll see what pops up next and everything in that department.
You can find me on social media at Luna's Creation Corner. Usually I'm on TikTok, but hopefully by the time you're watching this, hopefully the ban on TikTok actually gets canceled. If not, I'll have to find a new media platform. So, fingers crossed, guys.
YouTube Shorts are a thing.
Hey, you know what? The fact that I have to learn a new system on how to post videos.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Problem.
I think she's
make
talking
videos.
Yeah, more about for her crocheting.
Yeah, I would rather not have to learn a new way to make stuff. Plus, TikTok is just super convenient. Excuse me, without all the sounds and everything. So, but I'll hand it off to Brandy now.
You can find me on YouTube. I do all my cross stitch and crochet stuff under Brandywine Stitches, and then I'm on the rest of the socials at Hockeytown Candle Co. And I think this episode should be coming out in the new year, right?
Yeah, we did the math and everything, and sadly we didn't make mention for the previous one because it would have been I think the Sunday. It would have been released.
Our Christmas.
Yeah, the Sunday before Christmas.
So this one will be our New Year's episode. So, Happy New Year's!
Happy New Year!
From 2024.
Can't believe it's 2025.
We'll 2025.
Yeah, not looking forward to that year, all things considered.
It's gonna be our year.
We'll try.
Okay, listen, we're not talking politics. It's gonna be our year.
Yeah, me and Brandy are gonna be so prepared for everything.
Productive. We're gonna
I've got so many frogs made already.
They're gonna go nuts in the crafting department.
Yep,
we're gonna be selling everything. We're not gonna keep it in stock.
Yes, we're gonna be selling out, and I'm gonna get all my project's done.
You should totally make a candle, a Harry Potter themed candle based off of this. Since we've been at this for a while now, right? We started.
That's true.
We started this year though.
May. Yes.
But
6 months ago.
May or something.
Oh wow, it's 6 months and we've almost gotten through 2 books now.
Yeah.
I get a feeling it's each time it's gonna take a little bit longer and everything. Yeah. But I wanted to bring this up. I almost completely forgot about it. And we just finished.
You guys get a PS.
Terribly sorry to add even more onto this, especially since it's now 9:50 and I have work in the morning. We just got some possible confirmation for the actor for Snape for the HBO Max TV show that hasn't been released, and he hasn't been fully confirmed. He was considered the front runner and everything. And I cannot remember the man's name. And to be honest, the times that I did see it, I had a doozy of a time pronouncing it, to be perfectly honest. He is... what was his name?
I can also not pronounce that properly, and I'm not going to try, but he was...
Papa Isidu?
Papa Isidu.
We have terrible pronunciation.
We do apologize to the actor in question. Nothing against you personally. I personally had some concerns about the idea of casting a traditionally good-looking African African man playing a character who's basically part of the equivalent of fantasy Nazis. It's a little difficult to really phrase my concerns with this. I don't really have an issue with the man himself. I never met the guy or anything. But it's kind of like he could have played any other character, basically. I do not necessarily like the idea of him playing Snape, especially with how James treats Snape in the past. And it's just sort of like, I don't have an issue with a teenager going after a neo-Nazi fellow teenager, but having the rich white guy tormenting the poor black kid isn't exactly a very fun thought process when you break it down in certain ways. It's one, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't sit well with me, you know what I mean? I don't have a problem. He can be any other character, he can be any other person, stuff along those lines, but I don't necessarily like the idea of the Death Eaters being, you know, people that are part of marginalized groups in general. It kind of messes with things, in my personal opinion.
I feel like that makes a good point. When you first showed that to me, I was like, my immediate thought was, damn, this guy's very good looking. We're going to have the Alan Rickman problem all over again, and where people are thinking Snape is this really good character just because he's played by a very handsome man.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Kimmy is reading her right not to discuss this personally, so me and Brandy are going to be the only two that actually bring up. Honestly, if he does go through it and everything, and he does end up getting the job, more power to him if he does make it. I'm still going to watch it regardless. It's just going to make it's just going to be a little on the uncomfortable side, in my personal opinion.
I feel like I haven't seen anything else he's done, but if they choose him, I hope he does a very good job.
He's not getting any hate mail or death threats from us. No. Yeah. So, anyway. Yeah.
The casters. The people doing the casting.
I get it, though, but if he really is the best man for the job, okay, fair enough.
We'll go by talent.
We'll see what happens. Anyway, heck, for all we know, this could be animated, and Snape could still look exactly like he is, and he's just throwing the voice onto it. I think that I'm pretty confident it's live action, but I can dream. I would love an animated Harry Potter series, like TV series, because I feel like you could have so much fun with the magic visuals and everything. There's just something about it. You can only do so much with CGI and everything, but having a hand drawing out the actual magic of the world. I've loved the illustrated books and stuff along those lines. They get so wild and cool with the designs. Anyway, we've talked about this enough. We can continue on this discussion at a later point in time.
Next time when we find out more about the secret diary.
Yep. We will see you next time, so keep your wands at the ready. Ciao!